Alright guys, it's Chatterbox Reviews, coming at you guys with my review for True Detective Season 3, Episode 6. Alright, so back this week for True Detective. We're already on Episode 6, so we only have 2 more now left after this episode, and by the end of this episode, the last scene there in the episode, you can kind of tell where the rest of this season is going to go, the last 2 episodes, which is going to be just crazy, berserk kind of stuff going on now within this 90s timeline, and we still got the 2015 timeline. So anyways, so of course, as usual, we'll go over a recap of the episode here, and then get to my rating, favorite character, some more overall thoughts, some more of my theories then towards the end of the video. And also with that, love to hear your guys' thoughts and theories. Really appreciate the support that the last few reviews have gotten. A lot of you guys, wrote in last episode for the review, and a lot of stuff I didn't even consider. So I do really appreciate that. That interaction and the discussion with you guys is awesome. And of course, I'm gonna miss things. You're gonna miss things, and so hopefully we can help each other at the end of the day. But yeah. So anyways, we're back for season 3, episode 6. Love to hear your thoughts of the episode, and also your theories going forward. I know a couple people who commented were actually like pretty bang on with what's going on right now, especially with the ending of the episode. So hopefully we'll get some more good theories, and we'll try to figure this all out together, right? So anyways, if you do enjoy the video, just remember, like the video, and also consider subscribing to the channel. We're almost at 300 subscribers as the time I'm making this, so I do really appreciate that as well. So anyways, without any further ado, let's jump right into the episode. And essentially, we got a very quick scene of back in the 80s, where we basically got the continuation of Amelia and Wayne sleeping together there in that scene, and we get a little bit of a discussion about his backstory and his experience in the Vietnam War, and a little bit of stuff like that, but not too big of a scene there that occurred. But then what we then get is that transition from that scene where he looks in the mirror, and then he's back with the interrogation room set up. So really great transitions throughout this episode too, between the timelines, of course. And so anyways, we're back at the interrogation room with Tom. And so my thought as of last episode, if you watch the review, my thought was, all of a sudden, now Tom is being the one, that the girl on the phone was talking about. We still know it's Julie, but it is confirmed in this episode, so I guess we can say it. Julie is talking about Tom, and that's what I thought in that episode at the very end, and I thought West and Hayes were genuinely questioning Tom, and it turns out that is pretty much exactly what happens in this scene, at least. And then later on, of course, we see that little bit of a switch between, those two guys. So basically, the men listen to the tape again in the next room while Tom is still being held in the, basically the room that they can look through the glass, right? And so the AG, right, says it sounds like an indictment for Tom. That's how serious this sounds, and that's how serious he's taking the tape recording as well, right? And so then he says that he never had an alibi that night, right? And that, maybe, he starts questioning West and Hayes a little bit and saying, maybe they didn't look hard enough into Tom, right? Maybe you guys missed something here. Maybe this tape is enough for an indictment. Maybe we go back, you didn't have an alibi. And maybe this is our guy the whole time. Maybe Tom was the one who did it in the first place. And so this, and then, of course, one of, the AG's lieutenant or something like that says, we need to go at him hard. And, it's like, just out of complete nowhere. They never considered Tom before in the 10 years past, right? And all of a sudden, they want to go at him hard, and they want to, so they're really still trying to find a scapegoat, especially because there's been some, suspicion or skepticism around Woodard's conviction 10 years ago. Now, especially with his defense lawyer coming out and, trying to defend his name and all that. And so, with that, they need a new scapegoat, and Tom, after this tape, seems like the perfect guy to put that on, right? And so, you see right away them trying to attach that to Tom. But then Roland reminds them that they had Freddie Burns tell them that he saw the kids, and at that point, Tom was still at home working on the car. So, the AG kind of wants to ignore very important facts here and just jump into conclusions. And Roland, you see, he's still skeptical of that. Now, not that he totally thinks that Tom is, completely innocent in this, of course, but he is a little bit skeptical of what they're trying to push here, right? And so basically, we see at least that Roland at this point still kind of believes him in at least a little bit, right? He kind of believes him and still believes in him still, and is still trying to back him up a little bit with the facts. And I mean, if you look at the facts, everything else but this tape, it's like, no, Tom had no involvement. He was simply the dad, and he's a victim of this crime. So, not the main victim, but of course, victim of his children both dying at this point. So, anyways, then basically Roland and Wayne go back in to finally kind of hopefully get a confession from Tom, or if not, kind of prove his innocence. So, this was a very kind of heartbreaking scene as you see Tom. He finally understands Roland. And I mean, Roland and him, of course, we know have established a relationship together now in the 90s and throughout the decade that we missed here. And so this scene was really heartbreaking for Tom as he really realized that Roland had turned on him and Wayne for that matter as well. And you can see Roland feeling so guilty about it in the moment. And anyways, so here are some notable lines from the scene here. So, I think it's, so the first, I don't know what that call was, but there's no way we could be that wrong, is what Wayne tells, with Roland tells Wayne, right before they actually go into the room, he says that. And so again, he is still skeptical, but he is kind of weighing, the option of maybe Tom is, at least kind of involved, or at least maybe, worked with Woodard, or, something like that, right? And anything's kind of up in the air right now. So anyways, and so he basically, tells him to tell, him his side of the story so that they can help him, right? He says, tell us what happened and we can help you, to Tom, right? And Tom just immediately questions him, right? He doesn't fall for it at all. He says, my side, everybody knows my side. You think me? And I mean, the acting from Scoot McNairy in this scene was just impeccable. I mean, if you didn't like him before as an actor, this was an amazing scene of acting for this guy. Same with Stephen Dorff. Same with Mahershala Ali. Wow. So Tom looking to Roland for support right now because Wayne is starting to drill into him a little bit and kind of getting a little bit mean. And Roland just turns stone cold detective mode. And he just totally gives up on Tom. And again, an emotional scene here because Tom is really being, I would say, kind of betrayed by his one and only friend remaining. And that's a really tough situation that he finds himself in. So then Wayne questions him about the peephole in the closet, right? Accuses him of watching his own daughter. That's a pretty serious claim, right? And of course that peephole comes back in this episode. Tom just broken at this point. He says, after all this, you think I could do something like that? Right? And, again, just completely broken in tears, just, totally defeated at this point, right? And it feels so genuine. It's not like it feels fake either. So, anyways, and so Wayne and Roland at this point really, they both recognize that Tom didn't do it, right? They can see in this moment, too, that it is genuine and that Tom is not responsible, and they didn't, like Roland says. There's no way they could have got it that wrong, right? So anyways, so the AG, though, and his lieutenant still are reluctant to kind of give this up about Tom. They tell them to dig up on anything on him. They say they want him to get a warrant for his place, to go search his place and all this. So they are not giving up on their, number one scapegoat right now that they can pin this on, right? And so they basically, they say that he could have planted the items at Woodard's place. That's what happened. And in this moment, Wayne hesitates from telling them about the planted backpack and shirt, which is important to note as well. And it's like, I'm just watching that. I'm like so frustrated. I'm like, no, you guys planted, right? You guys planted the items, not Tom, right? And it's just frustrating, and we already know that, right? So then Roland raises the question about verifying the phone call, and it's like, exactly. What's that even, Julie? They don't even know yet that was Julie, and they're already ready to indict Tom. So you just see this overarching theme of them just trying to find now their big scapegoat that they want to pin this on and clean it up. All is good, just nothing to see here, and they want to move on. So then eventually we see a little bit later, they trace the location of the call to a truck stop. They do verify that it was in fact Julie Purcell, or at least that's the way that Wayne makes it out to sound in the 2015 interview, portion there. And so meanwhile, they basically are holding Tom in jail as they, this phone call. It's a lot, right? It's quite a bit of evidence against him. But of course, not enough to, send him to trial yet or anything like that, right? So he's in jail, and so at this time, they get a warrant for his place like the AG requested. They go to his place, and then they also talk to a former co-worker, right? And they ultimately make a discovery here. They find out that Tom is a homosexual. Or at least was kind of experimenting, it sounds like, as the man that they were questioning said some guys saw him go into a gay bar. And so, and then of course they're searching his house and they find this brochure about, how to cure homosexuality or something like that in his drawer at home. So we find out that, at least he was, kind of maybe experimenting in that way, or he was a homosexual. Of course, he had 2 kids and a wife. So, and maybe that's where that brochure comes in too. Maybe he knew that he was this way, but he wanted it to stop, something like that. And of course, huge involvement of the church for him and the family. So, obviously that would play a point too. So, this is raised here. I don't know how big of a deal this is going to be going forward, but I thought it was definitely worth mentioning. So then, a great scene here with Roland and Wayne in the car ride back from Tom Purcell's house after finding the brochure. So Roland tells Wayne to fuck off. And this was such a great scene because you saw earlier in the deposition or the interrogation, you saw Roland kind of turn stone cold, right, and turn on Tom, essentially. But now you ultimately see there he's just immediately regretting that kind of. And Wayne's, all speculating about Tom now, says that Tom, could have done this and he could have done that and all this stuff. And Roland just tells him to fuck off, right? He's like, Tom would not have done this, right? He just did not do this, and we were right in the first place. And Wayne's kind of fallen in because he hasn't developed the same relationship that Roland has at this point, right? So he's kind of fallen into the little narrative that they're trying to play. And so obviously Roland still believe in Tom at this point. So he says if Tom wouldn't, then they will clear him and they will clear his name, and that's what they are setting out to do now. Is ultimately they know that he probably didn't do it, but they want to prove it and they want to clear his name. Then Wayne says they need to go all the way this time and figure out then who it really was, and that's a big portion of this as well. If it wasn't Tom, then who is it, right? They're trying to find a scapegoat. Well, we want to find the real person who did it, and they're still out there. And I love this little flashback that we got, like the 80s, where we see exactly how the AG and his partners there, really dirty job, inside job here, quickly sealed the case up, completely blamed Woodard, while there was definitely some glaring inconsistencies with the case and evidence. And Hayes even questioned the AG in this scene, where we see the flashback of him, and he even knew at this point that it was a little shady, and but he couldn't really do anything about it. Of course, these are his higher ups, these are his bosses. He also, that race is also playing a big part too. I mean, that can't go unmentioned with this little situation too, with Wayne being black, and of course, that kind of dynamic, right, that's going on, of course, in this time. So anyways, Hayes basically can't do anything about it, but we know how shady it really was in the 80s and how they truly got the conviction of Woodard. It really was dirty, right? It really was some shady stuff there. So then we see Roland and Wayne meet up with Lucy's cousin Dan O'Brien. This was a funny scene, and again, the actor, I didn't get his name, but the actor who played Dan O'Brien, man, this was some good acting from a supporting cast member. I thought it was really great. I love this scene. So anyways, so Dan calls the tip line, I guess, says that he has something for them, and so they go and meet up with him in the diner. So he says he has information that will answer all of their questions, but he wants $7,000. So it's just kind of a funny thing. I love the way that they kind of just right immediately when they got there, cornered him in, got him in this booth, right? Wayne sits right next to him, and they really are pulling up the detective tricks here for sure. But he wants $7,000. So anyways, the first thing he does is raises suspicion about Lucy's death, right? Says it was meant to look like a suicide, but that it ultimately was not a suicide, and that it is all connected to the kid's death. So her fake suicide, as he's claiming, is connected to the kid's death and was part of that cover-up that happened. And so that was a pretty crazy remark, and it honestly is something that I didn't even think about. And that's like such a glaring thing, is like, wow, all we saw was a picture of her suicide. Like, wow, right? And so anyways, and also he tells them that they, Wayne and Roland, are not the only ones right now looking for Julie, which would make sense, especially if they covered up everything. Now this girl is alive all of a sudden. They want to find her too. They want to find her just as bad. So then he says he will call them again in a couple of days with the information, and given that he gets his money, of course, he's not going to tell them for free. Of course, he is kind of a junkie at this point, kind of, bouncing around, doesn't really have a, clear kind of path right now. And so to trust him would be a little bit murky at best, right? But Wayne, he says he thinks they should get the money ready because, to be honest, this is probably their best lead that they have. Even though he's a junkie and his reputation has been smeared, this is still the best lead that they have. And so they definitely want to kind of explore that for sure. So anyways, so then this was a really great scene here with Tom. So he gets let out of the jail, because they basically have no evidence to keep him there. And so anyway, so he gets out of the prison, or the little jail cell that they're holding him at there. And then he gets up and he goes to see Roland at his office. He's not there. And then he overhears then the other couple officers in the kind of room there talking about the guys, Wayne and Roland, and how they were talking to O'Brien. And right away, this kind of triggered something for Tom, and right away, it was like, you just saw that kind of look on his face that totally changed, and then he rushes out of the building, out of the station. So, something's coming, and it was a great scene. So then he shows up at the motel that Dan is staying at, says, you stay to this one every time you come into town, or something like that. So obviously Dan not covering his tracks very well. So it just immediately, right, shoves him into his room with a gun, holding up a gun towards him. And of course, we know that they didn't get along in the past. Maybe not this bad, but, they definitely did not get along in the past. And so that's an important key to mention as well. So Tom then demands right away, he says, "What are you selling to the cops?" Because he knows now, right, exactly what he's up to. So Dan tells him to put the gun down. He says that he'll tell him as soon as he puts the gun down, and, and help him out. But of course, right as Tom is about to lower the gun, Dan tries punching him, and right when he goes for the punch, Tom basically just takes him down. Right, he gets on top of him, then on the floor, just starts beating on him on the floor real bad. Obviously gets the better of Dan here, and then Tom at this point accused it, because remember, the whole people thing came back to Tom in that interrogation setting, right? And so then he accuses Dan of spying on Julie at the house, with that peephole there. And, has his gun right to his head, and he's ready to pull the trigger because he knows that this creep was spying on his daughter, his young daughter, right? And so, of course, that's just, completely kind of screwed up, right? But Dan denies it, and I mean, I believed it, and it turns out to be the truth. Dan denies that. He said he would never do that, right? And so, again, we see that Tom has been kind of tricked now into thinking the same way. And so then he tells him that he knows who has been paying Lucy all the years that she's been kind of out on Tom, right? And who would have a problem if she asked for more, or if she needed more money. That's a key, right? That's a key in this whole thing, is and then he says, "I was just going to give the cops a name." That's it. And that's pretty much where that scene ends. And so we know Tom didn't kill Dan O'Brien. Although we know his body ends up in a quarry somewhere. So, but I don't think it was Tom. Anyway, so, obviously Dan he knows a little bit of something. He knows the guy's name, and obviously, apparently, that gets him killed a little bit later on, and that also, tells Tom where to go at the end of the episode, which we'll get to in a couple moments. So, then, Hayes goes back to the abandoned Purcell house. This is back in the 90s. He discovers that the peephole was ultimately for the kids passing notes back and forth to each other. And he basically, nobody was spying on it, right? He finally discovers this in the 90s. Very smart, by the way, for him to go back and discover that, but just kind of unfortunate because we see Tom try to beat up Dan. They used it against Tom. Like, this peephole clue has been, like, huge, and it was just the kids passing notes back and forth. So, anyways, it is what it is, right? So, anyways, so that scene then in the 90s transitions to the 2015, where he shows Roland the board of notes. So Roland is now back at his house, right, after they kind of met up last episode. And he's kind of sharing, all the clues that he knows with Roland at this point. So anyways, so he shows him the board of the notes there, and Roland says, well, yeah, of course, we found that out anyways. And so he says that, he has some addresses that he wants them to check out together and kind of, touch base and try to find some more clues about the case, of course, in 2015. And I love Roland. He says, what do you think we're going to do, right? Like, what do you think we're going to do at age, 70 something that they're at, in 2015, it's been 25 years since the case. What are they going to do now, right? And it's a good point by Roland. And then we see Hayes goes to the washroom, and then he comes back, and he completely forgets that Roland is there. He's completely surprised to see him. And so again, memory comes back, that loss of memory. And you know what? I do want to bring this up because I saw it online, not my own thought, but online I saw this theory about how Wayne's memory, I think it's bad, but it's not as bad as he's letting on, right? And a lot of people are saying out there in the theories that he's using this memory as a key to get to Roland and get more information. And I think this scene is a perfect example of him kind of faking it a little bit. I don't know that this really is how his memory is at this point, but we'll have to see. I don't know what they're leading on here, but I thought that was interesting. So anyways, so he basically is surprised to see Roland again after just seeing him 2 minutes ago. And then he tells Roland to look, of course, for the car parked outside his window, which you've seen the last couple nights, of course. And Roland says there's nothing there tonight, right? Nothing there, nothing to worry about, right? And so was he just seeing things the whole time? Is Roland lying to him at this point? I saw some out there that Wayne is manipulating Roland and seeing if Roland is telling him the truth here as he's trying to, play on that he's forgetting his memory. So, you know what? Some cool stuff there. I don't know. I thought it was worth mentioning, and we'll have to see how that goes on. But that was pretty much one of the only 2015, scenes in this one, especially, again, with the interviewing one. We did find out that his son is having an affair with the interviewing lady. So that's, kind of a weird twist. But anyways, so that was interesting. Then this scene was really strange to me. So the film I-Man, back from episode 4, I believe, or episode 3, when they went to see this guy, of course, in the black neighborhood there, and we see that he comes to Amelia's book reading, and he's outraged over the case. He wants to find the real killer. Basically takes his anger out on Amelia, saying that she doesn't have the answer or whatever, and she wrote this book. She never claimed to have the answer in the first place, but it is weird. And then, of course, right when he, walks away, Amelia just kind of shouts, "Dolls," right? She connects it right away, and it's probably the first time that she's met this film, my guy. Interesting. So I thought that was worth mentioning. Not much more that we saw in this episode of him, but we'll have to see going forward. All right, now it is time to talk about that last reveal at the end of the episode. This was insane. The most insane reveal that we've seen yet. So after his conversation with Dan, Tom drives to this huge mansion. Of course, he's still a little drunk at this point, so we got to remember that. But he does drive to this huge mansion. He sneaks around back, he breaks a window, walks around a little in the mansion, and of course he has his gun ready. He's holding the gun the whole time. And, then he finds the basement, right, where there's a safe door that's unlocked and it's opened at this point. And of course the whole time there's a man that we see watching him on the security footage, going through and walking through the house, and he knows exactly where he is. So we know that at some point someone's going to catch up to Tom here. So anyways, he goes through the safe door. He opens the next door and finds the pink room. This is insane. I mean, the girl mentioned it to Amelia beforehand. I thought that was a throwaway scene at the time, but it comes back. The pink room. This was insane. Tom turns on the light, and it's like whole just pink walls. Really kind of creepy stuff. So he turns on the light, looks up, and he says, "The hell? Julie?" And, his face was just like, astonishment, shock, happy, a little bit of joy there. And of course, we don't see what he sees, so we'll have to see. But anyways, then of course that man walks up behind him, the detective from before at Hoyt Foods, Harris James, who is now serving as the chief security officer for Hoyt Foods. What a reveal. So, of course, Harris James walks up behind him there, and that is where the episode ends. So, it doesn't look too good for Tom, guys. I feel like Tom is going to die. And, of course, they talk throughout the episode about what happened to Tom, but Tom back in the 90s. So, I think he's dead, and I'll have to see how his death plays out here. But he did find the pink room, and possibly found where Julie has been, living for the past years. Alright, so in terms of my rating for this episode, I'm going to give it a 4.5 out of 5. For me, I know this seems like ridiculous kind of, but this is actually kind of low for what the, recent episodes have been. I think this is the lowest since episode 2. Wasn't a big fan of episode 2, but anyways, I feel like that's still the worst episode. This one, we got a lot of clues along the way, and that reveal at the end of the episode totally redeemed this episode for me. I just love it now. But I just felt like, along the way, of course, a slower pace to this one a little bit. Although we did get some, cool kind of action scenes, if you will, with Dan and Tom, wrestling on the ground there and all that stuff. And a lot of kind of reveals with this one. I did really like the transitions. Almost no focus on the 80s, though. I think we had like 2 scenes throughout the whole episode based in the 80s. And so it seems like that has kind of been tucked, away. And now we're, solely in the 90s. And, the stuff with Amelia is not quite making sense right now. It's a lot of stuff, relationship. They've been focusing on that, fair point. But also a lot of stuff coming in with her book right now and how she's writing a sequel and she wrote it. They're doing this book reveal. And you know what? I think Amelia has something to do with this case. And the fact that she's dead now and that Wayne keeps remembering her and all this stuff, I think something happened there, and I don't think that can go unmentioned. I think one of you guys mentioned that last review in the comments and said, Amelia has something to do with this crime. I agree. I think that they just pay too much attention. They give her too much focus right now for her to not be an integral part of the crime. Somehow, in one of these timelines, we'll have to see. Anyways, so yeah, slower pace to this one, but a lot of kind of clues along the way, I did really like the dialogue, though, character focus. I think it was more of that episode, a little bit less on, the kind of the big reveals, the big surprises, of course. Not mentioning the ending, right? So I did also think that the Roland turning on Tom seemed a little bit forced in that interrogation scene. It just seemed a little unnatural, and the way it kind of played out was, I don't know, I didn't love it, but I love then right after how Roland tells Wayne to fuck off, right? How he's speculating on Tom and doing all this stuff. Roland just completely refuses it, and, I get that his bosses are watching him in that room, in that scene. But it's, he really goes hard on him. He grills him. And, for him to, kind of do that, it just seemed a little bit forced in the scene. But anyways, that's another criticism for me. But obviously, some great reveals throughout the episode. So we get the 80s little flashback scene where the AG wraps up the case and blames Woodard. Of course, the ending to the episode, the big pink room discovery. And, of course, the Harris James stuff all played out in this one. Yeah, there were some other ones, 2015, Hayes and West there talking. So, anyways, some really great reveals. But, again, the ending, that was the highlight of the episode for me. It really did redeem this one. Not that I thought it was a really bad one, but I just thought it really kind of pushed it over the top for me, and really got me excited for next episode, man. I'm so excited. So, yeah. So, favorite character for this one, Tom Purcell, played by Scoot McNairy. Like I said before, I mean, that acting in that interrogation room scene with Scoot McNairy as Tom, and also the scene with Dan, I mean, those two scenes were acted so well. And again, for a supporting cast member to give us something like that in this show, when we've come to expect the performance from Herschel Lee, we've come to expect Stephen Dorff's performance, and Carmen Eogo has been good, and to see now Scoop McNairy come in and give us this type of amazing performance in this scene was amazing. Tom Purcell, I think his days are over. He's gone too far. He's discovered the Pink Room. They aren't going to let him go now. And so we'll have to see how Harris James handles this. Will he be, tortured? Will he live out his life with Julie in this Pink Room? Or, who knows what exactly is going to happen here going forward. But Tom, I think, will be dead by the time the end of the next episode comes around. But anyways, we're going to have to see, and obviously, so for my theories here, obviously we know at this point it's an inside job. And I've been kind of speculating that from the beginning. So obviously it's something about Hoyt Foods, about the mom. So Lucy obviously probably got into a kind of a bad dealing with someone at Hoyt Foods, or something to do with Hoyt Foods, the boss maybe. And so then, of course, maybe they take the kids from her at that point. Maybe they fake her death and all this stuff. And the AG essentially is just backing up for them because Hoyt Foods is such a big company and probably has a lot of influence on the department as well. So that would be my whole theory here. And of course, Harris James has a lot to do with it. We do know that he disappeared shortly after the 90s. So I'm wondering if he kills Tom to cover it up, and then they kill him to cover it up. So, it really just it is mind-boggling how deep this cover-up is going to go. But we'll have to see. So, anyways, my theories right now, it's an inside job. Amelia is involved in the crime somehow at this point. And I am a believer that Wayne may be faking his memory here in 2015, at least for Roland, and kind of using him a little bit as we saw in this episode. But those are my theories for now. Again, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this one and your theories. Only 2 more episodes to go of Season 3. I can't wait to see how this one wraps up. But first, I can't wait for next week. So anyways, guys, thanks so much for watching this review. As always, thank you so much for your support on these reviews and on the channel. I do really appreciate it. Really, really do. I really appreciate it. I love the discussion with you guys. Comments, likes, views, and all this stuff on the reviews. Really do appreciate it. And I'm really loving this season of True Detective. It's awesome. So, anyways, couldn't be more thankful. Anyways, once again, thanks so much for watching this one, guys, again. And we'll see you next week for True Detective Season 3, Episode 7, the second last episode of the season.